always remind me of these things. So yeah, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And people are flowing into the chat area too. Lots of people saying hello, good morning, how you doing, all that kind of stuff. So that's
Good
great.
morning, good afternoon, good
Good
evening.
morning. Hi,
Hey,
how are ya? Hi, how are ya?
see you all next time. No. Um, we're kind of at loose ends in terms of a topic today, so I figure we'll just do more of what we did last week because it worked so well. We'll just come up with questions ourselves to address and topics and little things to talk about that we run into on a daily basis. So I mean, if you're listening to the live stream, by all means, type in any questions that you want us to talk about. We'll be glad to do it. And meantime, we'll just come up with a few ourselves to talk about because that worked really well last week. I thought. I don't know about you
Hmm.
guys.
Yeah, no, I liked it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I liked it.
hmm It's all
So my
good.
first question is, Alex, what is that behind you? I know that's not a Delaware slang.
Oh,
What is
so
that behind you?
this is actually the backside of our wine rack. It's like a wine rack, but it's like it holds glasses up top, and so on this side is the living room. So we have pictures of my niece on this side, and then on the other side is the kitchen. So that's where all the wine and wine glasses are.
Okay,
Wow.
I thought maybe it was like a family shrine or something because I saw the photos and I saw all the the architecture. I'm thinking there's got to be something special going on there. But okay, that makes
No, we just like collecting cool stuff.
you just that's okay. And you were
Mhm.
mentioning before we got started that Tom has changed his background now, so we're just doing this whole background thing today.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sitting in a different chair that gives me more staying power
What
because I
part of
And
your
usually
me and
fall.
Tom,
I
star?
tend to fall asleep during the
The
podcast.
podcast?
the podcast. Me and Tom have the same star
Yeah,
that
hers,
he
Star?
has hanging. Yeah, I
hers is
have.
in her bedroom. Yeah.
Yeah,
How'd you manage to do that? I'm curious. Is that just another law of
I got
attraction?
mine in New Hampshire. It was a gift from my mom when she went on vacation. I actually
Wow.
had three of them.
I got mine in a cool shop in Boulder because there's lots of cool shops in Boulder. With all kinds of that stuff. And this was one of those shops that sells things from all over the world that are fair trade items. So this is
Mhm.
some kind of a fair trade item. I don't know where from, but I think
Mhm.
Indonesia or somewhere like that. You know,
Cool,
it's
cool.
Okay.
really cool. It's really cool. Yeah, if you want, I could go and give you a close up of it, and yeah,
No, I think we ought to get to the meat
yeah.
and
The questions, the
get to
law of
the
attraction.
yeah. So, all right, who's going first today? I'm not even going to assign it. I'll just say who's got the first question. And we'll see who pops up their hand. Up, Alex has got her hand up. Go, Alex.
Ding.
Okay. What do you do when you get angry?
A good question, and it happens every single week for some people. So it happens every single
Mhm.
hour for some people.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
that
yeah.
that could be a pretty important thing. Um, Probably the answer is not to bury it,
Mhm.
because when you bury it, all you do is just make it continue to haunt you for the rest of your life. So we'll kind of rule that answer out entirely. Um, Actually, you know what I do? I do what they call the walking meditation.
Mhm.
I literally get up and I just start walking around, working out the energy. That's
Okay.
my way of getting it out. And if I'm really angry, then I'll grumble and maybe even shout something.
Mhm.
But I try to make it a point not to direct my anger at a person. I try to direct it at the wall or at a tree or I know poor tree, but something other than a human being, just so that they don't feel like I'm angry at them or that it's all their fault or whatever. But
Right.
Well,
that's
that explains the flat spot on your forehead. Hitting those trees, hitting those walls. Arr!
Oh, no, he didn't. That
I'm
was
speechless.
fantastic. That was fantastic. Oh, the shade is real. Woo.
So with that answer in mind, I'm going to pass it along to you, Tom. What do you do when you're angry?
I don't get angry. I stuff it. No, I think I did learn at a really early age to stuff it because it wasn't okay in my family. Only my mother could get angry. My dad would get angry in really kind of a repressed way, where he would take it all inside and then he would see the steam coming out of his ears, but he wouldn't let it out. So I kind of learned to not let it out. So I think I just sort of, I sort of internalized it, and I'm trying to let it out more these days. I'm trying to let myself at least notice that I'm angry. I like it when I say to myself, "Oh, I'm angry," because I'm pretty even keeled kind of guy.
Mhm.
So if I do feel it, I want to know that I'm angry and let myself, if I can, let myself express it, not to necessarily to anybody else, but at least myself.
Mhm.
Hit my head on
Well,
a wall.
you probably deal with it just because you're a life coach. I mean, you're dealing with individuals and their personal stuff every day, and I imagine anger comes up a lot in that context as well. So even if you're not dealing with your own, you're often helping somebody else deal with theirs.
Yeah, it's pretty common. I mean, a lot of people don't overtly talk about their anger. I think a lot of people do try to repress it, actually. But I
Hmm.
do hear about it, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, okay.
So, well, how about our
What's your,
audience? Is anybody?
well, that's a good point. Let's see. Nashia says anger bottled up can make for serious health issues. Boy, is that the case.
Yeah,
That's
Facts.
really true. Yeah. And William says, Bill G's tuned in. That's great. Anger is generally due to an unmet expectation. So you
Mm.
need to determine what your unmet expectation is, and then you can start to deal with it on an internal level.
I like that answer.
Yeah, that's very, very good. I wish there was an emoji for a star. I don't have a star emoji, but that's all right. I'll give him a heart.
or you give everybody emojis who calls in, who checks in.
Well, I try to like people's comments to partially like them and partially just to let them know, yes, we see you, and you're acknowledged because I think acknowledgement is really important.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, and it's not on the topic of anger. It's actually on the topic of joy. Suraj is saying he had another successful presentation. This time
Oh,
they grabbed,
congratulations.
this time they grabbed 436 new client prospects out of one presentation.
Wow,
Holy
Nice.
that's awesome.
cow.
They must have been to a pretty big crowd.
I think it
Yeah.
was over 1,000 if I remember right.
Yeah,
But
he
Yeah.
even
he,
so,
ta- he
that
talked about talking to a lot of people. Oh, that's a great response. Yeah,
that's an incredible response rate. Well, so congratulations. That's
he
really
must be a good speaker.
oh yeah, really, really
That
well
is
done.
great. That is great
Great.
Oh,
news.
it's amazing what you can do. First of all, when you're not angry, and second of all,
Mhm.
when you're in that good frame of mind and you're believing and you're just
Mhm.
putting out there everything's going to work out, and then it does.
Yeah,
That's like, oh
yeah, that's wonderful.
yeah, that's really, really good.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So, I don't see any other comments about anger. How about you, Alex? You brought up the question. What's your solution on, what do you do when you get angry?
It depends on why I'm angry. I like what was it? Was it Jeffrey that said that gave that great answer?
Oh, that was Bill. That was Bill G.
Bill. Bill G. I like his figure out why your unmet expectation is.
Hmm.
Because that speaks volumes. Because it's
Does.
so true. It's like, oh, that is the reason.
Hmm. Yep.
But what do I do when I'm angry? I take the Walt route and I do the walking
Whoa.
meditation. Literally, I do the walking meditation thing. Like I'll walk around the house, I'll find something else to do, try to take my mind off of it. But at the same time, like I'll stomp it out. If I have gotten really angry once and actually punched a wall.
Oh,
So yeah, but that
Ouch.
was yeah.
Who got
I
hurt
mean, it
more,
wasn't.
you or the ball?
I mean, I studied karate for years, so I know the right way to punch, so it doesn't
Ah,
hurt.
wow. You took the
Yeah.
wall out.
burn it out.
But
Yeah.
and the wall didn't get hurt either.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now if I had kicked the wall, there would have been a problem. There would
Hmm.
would have been some holes to fill.
Hmm. Yep. It
So yeah.
reminds me of something that happened when I was quite young. And it was when I was still a churchgoer. I was like
Hmm.
probably 10, 11 years old, and my cousins were roughhousing near me. I was
Hmm.
just standing near a wall, and I don't remember
Hmm.
exactly what happened, but one of them kind of careened into me, I slammed into the wall, and there was a huge Walt mark in the wall from where he slammed.
Walmart.
And I was thinking, I was just standing here.
A Walt mark. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. I never heard of those. Something Walt knows about it. Oh, it's a Walmart.
Yeah.
It's
It was like this big
6 feet high, 6 feet 6, 6 feet 8.
Yeah.
jumped into the drywall. The drywall just didn't handle it, and there it was.
Yeah.
So clearly, we're not having any anger issues this morning. This is
No.
a happy comedy fest going on. But let's see if we, second question. Maybe we can get back to something a little more serious, and then see if we can turn that into something funny. So, Tom, you got a question for us that we can address?
I got an interesting one that I'm sort of addressing. How do you listen to your intuition?
Mm.
That's a good question.
And act on your intuition.
I
So
know.
I'm curious how different people do that.
I know for myself that was actually an issue for quite some time because I wasn't really sure when I was hearing my inner voice,
Hmm.
and even now I'm not always sure.
Hmm.
Hmm.
It wasn't until I heard the very direct and specific and blunt explanation from Abraham that your feelings are your intuition.
Hmm.
What your emotional and even sensory feelings are
Hmm.
are clues from your inner being, what I call my inner world. That this is how I feel about whatever it is that you're focusing on.
Hmm.
And once I got that, then I kind of relaxed because then I realized, well, I am getting an intuitive message, and it's one that I can read consistently because I know how I feel. So, oh, good. I thought I'd lost all contact with my inner self. Nobody was ever answering. I thought, well, it turns out they were all along. I just didn't realize it. So
Yeah.
that's my method, connecting to the emotions.
Hmm.
Okay.
How about you, Alex?
I think for women it's a lot easier because we're like born with intuition, so we're always listening to it.
Mm.
Whereas like, let me think. I don't know what, if you're like in a situation or if you're in a relationship and you have a feeling that something's wrong and we're always listening to that inner voice and sometimes it can get us in trouble and sometimes we don't listen to it and yet that can get us in trouble. So, but yeah, I think for women it's a lot easier because I listen to
Mm.
my inner Alex all the time.
Mm. Does it show up in your body, or would you say it's mainly in your head? Or
I feel like it's all over.
hmm.
Because, like, if someone's near me and I feel like they may be mad at me or something, I get like overheated.
Mm.
Mm.
Like
Hmm.
I feel warm all over, and I'm like, okay, I'm feeling like you're a little miffed. What's going on?
Hmm. But you get it in your body. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
but
Yeah.
it all translates to your brain eventually because you have to process what the feeling is. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like I feel it in my body, and it's like like an or an It's like a
hmm
just sort of a sense of, yeah, I want to go with this or I don't want to go with that. I've been
hmm
practicing it for the last several years because I guess because Abraham originally talked about it so much about,
hmm
are you following your impulse? There's
hmm
impulse that comes from source, and I feel like that's so key to my doing with my life what I really want to do with it is if I'm following an impulse as opposed to following an analytical, decision. Because
hmm
sometimes those things that, to notice the difference between if I'm struggling with what my decision is or is it flowing, and when it's
hmm
flowing, I feel like that's when I know that I'm doing the thing that feels like the next best thing to do. You know what
hmm
I mean? Like sometimes just something will call me and to read something or to get on the internet and check something out and I'll just kind of know in my whole body it feels right to be doing that. And
hmm
I'm questioning it less and less,
Yeah,
I'm going with the impulse.
I was just
always go with
realizing
your intuition.
I was just
Yeah.
realizing that a lot of the time, this sounds strange. A lot of the time, my inner wall gives me the silent treatment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And by that I mean there are many times where my inside will disagree with what I'm focusing on or choosing or thinking about or considering, and it will initially manifest, if you will, by just what I'm calling the silent treatment. I'm not getting any answer, and then if I
Mhm.
really push it, it starts to feel like a inside. And if I really
Mhm.
push it, it starts to feel even more like an inside. So
Mhm.
the message is there, but it's so subtle that I very often miss it. So that's why I call it the silent treatment because it feels like I'm not getting
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's subtle, so subtle because you were doing the right thing in the first place, so you didn't even need it.
possibly. But what I found is when it's something that is the right thing, I actually get a strong feeling, a surge
Mhm.
of whoa, that feels good. That feels really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So it's more like the on-off switch of if it's on, then it's yes. If it's off or it's like then it's no.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been spending the last 5 years or so learning to slow down and, to not always feel like I have to always have an agenda. And,
Mhm.
and that, and that's a good way then to, in those spaces of slowing down, to see what voices are speaking to me in terms of, what do I really want to be doing in terms of action? Because sometimes action is just not really required as much as we think it is. There's a lot more room to just be. I mean, our world is designed, so much to be active, to be accomplishing something and be productive and show up in the world with all these results. But I think a lot of that is conditioned, and we
Mhm.
don't have to be that way so much. The whole society could benefit by slowing down, I think,
Mm.
a bunch.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then you listen and you see, like if we lived out in nature, what would nature be saying to us?
Right.
They say the average, like anthropologists say the average indigenous tribe, I don't know if there's this actual, statistic, but they say they work maybe 3 hours a day, anything they could call work that they're actually doing. Everything else is chilling. They're maybe, preparing food or, just hanging out, singing, dancing. I think we try way too hard in our modern culture
Mhm.
to produce results.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Bill G had another insightful comment. He says, I was dealing with a client this week who was going through a very dark time, and at moments I really didn't have a clue what to do. So what I did was I allowed things to happen the way it was supposed to go, as guided by his higher self. And I was able to say the right things, and the things actually worked out in the end. And I know
Mhm.
exactly what you're talking about because I've done the same thing here on the podcast. I mean, there have been
Yep.
times where I really had no idea where the podcast was going to go next. And whoever my co-host was looking for me, looked at me like, "Okay, where are we going next?" And I'm thinking, I haven't the faintest idea, but I just kind of went with it, and it would go
Yeah,
into a really cool direction. So
that's intuition. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I guess that is, isn't it?
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you get an impulse, and those impulses come subtly
Hmm.
sometimes. We don't even realize, but that we are being guided.
Mhm.
I love that question. I think it was in some Abraham stuff I was reading where they said, "How do you know that the thoughts coming in your head that you're generating them, or that they're actually could be coming from source?"
Mhm.
You don't know. I mean, unless you stop and listen and slow down and start to realize maybe I'm not creating everything so much as I think I am. Maybe a
Mhm.
lot of this is being orchestrated for me in some kind of a divine way. There's
Mhm.
something wonderful happening here and I'm just trying too hard to be in control.
Mhm.
I have noticed that there is I guess you might call it a geographical signal that often tells me which it is, whether it's me creating it in my own mind or if it's something that I'm getting from my internal Walt or higher self or whatever you want to call it. And
Mm,
that is, if I'm generating it, I find it's more up here. I'm just getting it, it's more down here. So there's like
Mhm.
a different location. And
mhm,
if I
mhm.
can when I can pay attention to that, that's when I have a better sense of where's this thing coming from? Did I just make this thing up? What is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, that's another clue. I think that really comes down to what do you find works for you? Because everybody's going to have their own way of identifying what their intuitions are.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's more like trial and error. It's more like just trying it out and seeing and testing that. Well, that didn't quite work right, until you find what the pattern is that works for you. Because it's got to be different for everybody. We're all different people.
Right.
Yeah. I find it helps to be asking myself, am I listening and am I feeling truly receptive
Mm.
to receiving impulses that are coming to me? Or,
Hmm.
am I struggling? Because when I'm struggling and trying, I don't notice impulses at all, really. It's like it's all like on my shoulders. But when I say I just want to be listening and receiving, I love that feeling. Then I
Hmm.
get better dreams, all kinds of things happen that open me up to what's going on in my body. I for years I never really asked that question. And now I heard this thing saying your body is your subconscious. Your body is your unconscious. So whatever
Hmm.
you ever want to know what's going on with your unconscious, just see what's going on in your body. It's telling you a lot, but we've got to learn to listen.
A couple more comments from our audience. Shelley said, "You are the source, so it's all good," which is an interesting point. I mean,
Hmm.
even if you feel like you're generating your thoughts, you're still connected to source. So, yeah, that's valid. Bill G
Good
agreed
point.
with that. And Bill also added, "Your best thoughts and/or insights generally come from your angels and/or higher self. How you interpret that and integrate it into your life is all on you." And that's another
Mm-hmm.
piece of it too, because it's not just what message are we getting, is what does it mean to us?
Hmm.
And that's, again, very individualistic. Everybody's going to have a different interpretation of what they get because it's for them and it's about them and it's their own experience. So how could
Mm-hmm.
it how could it be the same message for everybody? It would be impossible.
Yeah, it's constantly
Yeah,
changing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up another question that I had today, which was, do you feel like your angels or your guides or your source, your sense of source, is within you, or do you feel that it's far away from you? Because I grew up with the idea that God, is some kind of this omnipresent being, and of course there was the childhood idea of the guy with the long white beard who lives in heaven, and he's looking down on us and he's up there and it's a he, and anyway, all that stuff, right? And now it's like I feel like I'm spending huge amount of my life to just allow myself to accept the fact that source is within me, as one of our listeners
Hmm.
just said, source is actually in me, and I'm not like trying to receive a signal from some distant planet, where source is beaming out this message to me, and I'm stuck on the earth and I'm trying to figure out things. You know, it's a whole change when we start seeing source as literally inside of us. Do you guys see source? Do you see Alex? Do you see sources inside of you?
I see it as both, like an inside voice and an outside force, in the same way. I don't know how to explain it. Um, but I guess it depends on the situation. It
Hmm.
depends on what I need at the time, where I pull from.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah,
like if you're go ahead, Walt.
I'm kind of with you. I mean, if you ask me, is source inside, I'll say yes. If you ask me if source is outside, I'll say yes.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And to
Yeah.
me, there's not a whole lot of difference. It's not
Right.
where is it, it's what am I detecting and where am I detecting it?
Yeah.
Hmm.
What am I feeling? What am I experiencing? That's more, I think, of what it's about. But I mean, if you think about the fact that uh, from what we're taught, and I believe it's true, um, both from a mystic spiritual point of view and from a quantum physics point of view, that source energy creates matter by thought process, and that
Hmm.
vibration process more precisely, and that as vibration happens, matter gets created, kind of gets formed, and becomes solid, and so forth. Well, as long as that's the case, then source is everywhere because it's not like
Right.
source energy disappears after it becomes matter. It just kind of holds the
Hmm.
form of matter for a while, you know,
Yeah.
maybe a long, long while, but it's still
Right.
holding the form as matter. And that means it's still source energy. So
Hmm.
actually, the better question is there any place where there isn't source? And I think the answer is no.
Right.
Hmm.
I think, and to me, the question is why am I perceiving it the way I'm perceiving it? I mean, if I'm laying there in bed at night and I'm struggling with some question, or some feeling that I'm feel alone in trying to figure out where's source, you know? So it's almost like if I don't accept that source is there and somehow open myself to it, then I can feel alone in my problem. Feel like I'm this individual being who struggles with my own challenges. And in the eyes of source, that's not the way it is, and that supposedly, our emotions are simply to show us if we're aligning with the way source is seeing it or not. So if we're feeling angry or sad or fearful, that's a sign that source is not seeing it that way. And it's hard for me to not think of source as this outside force, like the old idea of God almost. But it really isn't that. I know it really is inside of me. It really is who I am. And it's a big shift for me to really understand that I'm source. I am my higher self. There isn't really a higher and a lower self. There's just self, then self with a capital S. There's with this whole idea of the small self and the large self and the ego, being this diminutive person who struggles. And I mean, it divides it all up too much. It's like, I'd rather just see it in its entirety somehow. So that's why I feel like I have to surrender so I can listen and receive and understand that I'm not this separate being who's struggling here. That's an illusion.
Yeah, that's a good point. Nashia is asking me to explain what I meant when I said that source is both inside and outside. And again, it comes down to this, Nashia. It comes down to what creates matter. I mean, we think of matter as something to create with, but what creates matter? From my perspective, that's how I know that source is both within and without, because the without is the matter area. It's the physical world, right? And in that physical world, you got objects, you got things, and these things we know are mostly empty space, little tiny bits of subatomic particles and so forth, but it's mostly empty space, and yet that empty space feels solid to us. That's because it originally, in my view, is source energy that has been molded by thought process, by vibrational process, into these various pieces of matter. Right. Well, that means it's still source. I mean, in fact, that's actually very consistent with the Einstein theory, Einsteinian theory of relativity. Energy and matter are basically two different states of the same thing. You really don't have a distinction there, and right. That's it's also a theory of a conservation of matter, conservation of energy, which I think is a little bit strange actually, but nevertheless, that's how they come to that conclusion about that. Matter and energy are. We treat them as separate. It makes sense to treat them as separate, but really matter is energy hardened. That's really what it is.
Yeah, and in quantum physics, you could also call it waves and particles. But all energy, is they say is either a wave or a particle, and when it becomes when the wave condenses, and the wave only condenses into particle, like the skis in the back of you, or those objects you're holding up, or our headphones on our heads, it only condenses into these particles because the observing consciousness believes that exists.
Right.
And yet they call this like a morphic field. It's a field of conscious agreement that this exists. I don't understand how that all works. It works with more than just my conscious agreement with it, but somehow this thing that source is doing it all. So there's nothing that isn't source, and it's all made out of light somehow, all made out, and not not the light that we just see in the light bulb or just from the sun, but there's something even more than that. That's the light, that creates. It's pretty amazing, when you think about it. Like, it's all a great big light show. It's all a big movie with actual living things and objects, and it's like astounding. If we could see it from that perspective, we would be freed, I think, from so much belief in the quote reality of everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm always trying to work on in my mind anyway, coming to grips, coming to terms with the fact that all this apparent matter is malleable.
Yeah,
Mm.
malleable.
And I'll be perfectly honest, it still floors me at times.
Yeah.
Really does.
Constantly.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, by the same token, I also know my thought process and the thought process of everybody else ends up changing it, transmuting it, doing all kinds of things to produce completely different physical results from what I would have expected. And so even if I have a hard time believing at times that all of this stuff, this matter, this physical stuff is malleable, I still get examples of it happening every single day.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest part about it, I think, is just recognizing the pattern. That's why so many of us need to have law of attraction as a concept presented to us,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not an obvious connection to make. It
Mhm.
has to be pointed out to us. I mean, I'm really glad that we've had teachers to do exactly that, because otherwise, I mean, I went through a large portion of my life not making the connection at all. And I was a pretty
Mm-hmm.
logical, rational guy throughout that time, but never saw the connection. In fact, if the connection was pointed out to me, I would usually deny it. I'd say,
Mm.
"Oh,
Yeah.
you're just making that up. You're imposing your own thought process on that. That's not really true. It's not logical. It doesn't make any sense. There's no foundational science to back that up, and all that kind of stuff."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the tricky thing is that thought, if it is creating everything, then it would indicate that there's a lot more malleability than we even know. You know, that we're just sort of like novices. It seems like I feel like I'm a novice, a beginner in understanding how my thought is creating reality, and that I can literally change reality with my thought. You
Mhm.
know, it's like, really? But I see that happen every day too.
Well,
Yep.
we've got another good question here. This one's from Suraj. He says, I was reading some articles on the law of attraction and meditation and came across two terms, segment intending and reality bending. And he wants us to discuss those.
Mhm.
Talk amongst yourselves.
It almost sounds like you're at a test. Okay. Expand and contrast and discuss the topic. Yeah.
Right.
But well,
Okay, so
segment intending, that one's right out of Abraham Hicks.
Yeah.
Um,
mhm.
Tom, you're probably the best expert. Do you want to talk about what segment intending is?
Segment intending is amazing. It's helped me so much in my life. I used to, next to appreciation, I've felt that it was one of the most powerful things I've ever done. And that is, let's say that you're going to a party and you're driving there, and on the way you can say to yourself, I think I'm going to intend that this evening at this party I experience, and then start naming the things you want to experience. That's segment
Mhm.
intending. So you could say, well, I want to have some really awesome conversations tonight. I would like to actually have a chance to meet most all the people at the party. So I'm going
Mhm.
to intend that I have good conversations with almost everybody. And let's say there's only 10 people there, and I'm going to intend tonight that I laugh a lot. I have a lot of
Mhm.
humor, and I'm going to intend tonight that I don't drink more than 2 glasses of wine or whatever. That I only eat 2 pieces of cake, not 4. Um, and so segment intending is just going into any segment of your day. You can do it when you first wake up in the morning. You can do it at 10 a.m. You can do it again at noon. Do it before you go into a meeting. You could do it before you get on this podcast. You can intend and say what experience you want to have. And it's a powerful thing because I've found it so many times. It just goes down just like I intended. That's what's so
Mhm.
cool. And
Yeah.
and in places in the past where I would have been, say, going to a party and maybe oh, I'm going to be seeing so and so, and God, I hope she doesn't, like bring up that issue again about what happened with Joe, and that segment intending in the wrong way, in the way that's going to set me up for that to happen again. And
Mhm.
Exactly.
so I can do the opposite. I can go, God, oh my God, Sylvia's going to be there, and I'm intending that I don't talk to her or whatever. I'm intending that I work that out with her. That I'm going to work
Yeah.
out this thing that's been bothering the two of us for 4 years. I'm going to have that conversation tonight. So you make that intention, then it's cool to let it go. Then after you make the intention, then just go to the party and have a blast. I find that it's not good for me to keep thinking about it, but sometimes in the middle of the party I go, wow, this is everything I wanted is coming true. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
But
spooky.
I don't do it as much as I used to.
Segment intending is very valuable. I like the reasons and examples you gave. The other thing I'd like to add is segment intending is a wonderful way to help keep yourself into that high vibration place, that really good feeling. Especially if, like me, you have a history of starting off good and then you find yourself going downhill after a while because you're focusing on the wrong stuff. But when you do a regular process of segment intending throughout your day, doing it like 2, 3, 4 times throughout your day, it's kind of like doing a reboot. Restart the day, so to speak. So
Yeah.
you start off good and then you start to go downhill. You caught the fact that you're going downhill. Do another segment intend for what's going to happen in the next 10, 15 minutes or whatever. Pick yourself back up and then do the segment intend. And by pick yourself back up, I mean consciously take steps to feel better, because you actually have to do the feeling part before you put out the thought message that you want to put out there to manifest in some way. So give you an example. When Louise was going through the major medical situation she was going through, I knew that I had to limit my segment intending with her to when I felt good. And a lot of the time with that, I wasn't feeling good. So I would literally take myself aside during the day. And my go-to during that period was to go to a photograph of the two of us when we were visiting Seattle, Washington, back in the early 2000s. And we were really, happy faces and all that kind of thing. So it was a good reminder of what we're like when we're feeling good. And then I would focus on that for a little bit, and then I would segment intend whatever I wanted to segment intend. So what I'm pointing out is it's reminding me to go through my day and find times to get myself to feel better, and then do my segment intend. That's how I get the cycle back onto the right track. And there have been times when I've used it in the simplest things. The one that I can recall most recently was not this past night, but the night before. Louise was awake most of the night. I didn't realize that, and I awoke around 4 o'clock in the morning. Found out she'd been awake, and I could tell the different ways. You know how it is when you're wrestling with something, you're kind of struggling and you're resistant and all that kind of thing. Well, she was demonstrating all of that. I knew she had to let go of that resistance. I tried to help her, kind of talk through it and so forth, but it wasn't working. She wasn't having it. So I just got myself into the happiest place I could find, and I started imagining her falling asleep and literally sleeping and breathing loudly and all that kind of thing. And within 10 minutes she was asleep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's reality bending.
Yeah, well, that's the other part of it, right? But reality bending, that's not a term I'm really familiar with, but I can tell what it means. It's pretty obvious what it means.
Right.
I mean, are there particular examples of reality bending you can think of, Alyx, that have occurred in your life recently? I mean, I can think of one big one, but are there anything that you can just bring up as an example?
I guess I reality bend all the time, and I didn't know I was doing it. So, like when I wake up in the morning and I have, well, I don't know if that's intention. Well, anyways, so I wake up in the morning and I already have the conversations I know I'm going to have with the nurses that are coming. Like I already know how it's going to go, what questions they're going to ask, and then they come and that's what we talk about, and those are the questions they ask, and I don't know, and I do that in mostly with when I know I have to interact with someone. That's usually when it happens, or at least that's when I notice it, but I'm probably doing it all the time.
Yeah, you're right. That's when it's most reachable, I think, or
Yeah.
most, we remember it most because we figured, well, maybe I can do something to influence this conversation I'm going to have or this interaction I'm going to have with somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to feel less confident in my psychic abilities now that we're talking about this, though.
Why is that?
Because it's more reality bending than it is me predicting the future.
Oh, I see what you mean.
It's like I
Yeah,
planned this. Not
we're,
it wasn't happening and I saw it.
it seems like we're always reality bending. It's just that I don't know what we're calling reality, you know. I
Hmm.
know that I'm sure I'm always thinking there are certain realities that are fixed, you know, like the bill that I've got to pay, or, you
Yeah.
know, my ability on the guitar, you know. I think of these things as having a certain reality, but it's just basically the thoughts I have about it and
Hmm.
my limitations I put on it. That's what
Hmm.
defines the reality, but the reality can be bent every second probably by our ability to not put things in a box, you know,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
much
Hmm.
not put such a rigid definition on it that we decide we're limited by that. But if we stop, sit back, that's why it's good to slow down and really ask ourselves, how do I want to approach this, and what really is what really can't be bent here, you know,
Yeah.
what can't be altered here, even if we're having a pain in our body. Can it be changed? You know, yeah, but what is it going to take to do it?
Hmm.
That's a whole other story. To me,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of relaxation sometimes, and not trying so hard, and sort of just being with the feeling of the pain in my body, and then asking myself, can that change? Can that morph? Is it malleable? Like Walt, like you were saying, Walt, everything's malleable.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of when I was in college and even shortly after that. You could always tell who the science majors were, particularly the quantum physics majors, because they all wore the same T-shirt. The T-shirt said, "Reality, what a concept." And that was
Yeah, right, 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 right.
so. Yeah, that was good. So let's see. We need another question.
I think it's your turn, Walt.
All right. Let's see. What can I come up with here? Well, all right. Let's put it very simple. What's the next thing you're going to try to attract into your life?
Ooh.
What's your next deliberate creation? I think I've stumped the panel. Hey,
No, no, I have one. I'm letting Alex go first.
No,
oh,
you go first because I don't even know.
Oh, okay. I'll say mine is going to be. I'm right now coming up with aspects of who I want to show up, and so I'm sort of rebranding myself, and so I want to pull from my life experience and what I know about where I'm headed and who I am at this point in my life. I want to pull it into a definition of myself. So, in a way, I want to create a reality of how I would like my the public to see my offering as a life coach and the workshops I'm creating. And it's like I want to. So that's what I'll be looking at after I get off the phone. I'll be looking at how do I want to create that, you know? And it's an interesting thing to pull that together because it's completely at my discretion of being honest with myself and being authentic, and then how do I put that out there? Then who's my audience? You know, who would want to work with me, and how do I want to work with them? So that's
that's good.
reality creation.
Yeah, that's really good. How about you, Alex? You got anything in mind? What's your
Okay,
next thing?
so the next thing I want to deliberately create is I'm trying to get Facebook portals for my whole family.
Hmm.
So that's next on the list. I'm thinking for everyone's birthday, they get one, and then by the end of the year, we'll all be able to communicate with each other. Even though we group chat now, but seeing each other face to face is totally different.
And why Facebook for that?
Well, that's what that's who created it, the Facebook portal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there are lots of portals. That's why I was wondering. But
Well, it's an actual. You haven't seen the commercial? No.
No,
I
what
can't
is it?
say
Okay.
it's a
So it's
product. But yeah.
yeah, it's a video chatting device.
Okay.
So you set it up in your home, and it comes with Alexa. So you set it up in your home, and then you use Facebook Messenger to video chat with your other family members or friends or whatever. And it follows you around the room, so you can be like, you can do everything's hands free. So it's better than, video chatting on your phone or whatever.
Got it. Okay.
Oh, so
But
like
they're
it's
expensive
a little
though.
camera. It's a little camera that just follows you around the room and is
I guess if you want to simplify it like that, yeah.
yeah. Oh, I'm
Okay.
also going to create breakfast.
I love
And
it.
and every meal is very interesting creation, because I can
Mhm.
look at the refrigerator and the cupboards and everything. So, what do I really want to eat? You know, and make it really interesting. I've been
Yeah.
creating some meals lately that are incredible. Oh my God,
Hmm.
I didn't know food could taste so good. But you put the right things in there. I mean, why didn't I didn't the other night I was eating this thing. Why didn't I ever make this before? This is so easy to make. But
It's a really great point though, because we tend to forget that mundane stuff is still
Yeah.
creative. There's law of attraction still plays a role in it, even if it seems like I just walked across the room and picked something up.
yeah,
There was
Hmm.
still a law of attraction element to it. We tend to pretend we like to pretend that law of attraction is just the magic trick that we do to make something appear out of nowhere, and the rest of the time we're
Hmm.
just doing regular stuff. But
Right.
that's involved in everything,
Right.
and that to me is equally as difficult to remember as trying to remember that all matter is malleable.
Hmm.
They basically are in the same ballpark, but
Yeah.
that every moment is malleable.
every moment
Hmm.
is.
So if you're driving from one place to another and you've got 20-minute drive, that entire 20 minutes is malleable. You could do, what you decide to listen to, at least in your car, and how you decide to think about where you're going and everything. Are you going to do segment intending, or are you going to worry about some problem, or are you going to put on some incredible music, and if so, what? Or are you going to listen to a
Hmm.
talk show, and if so, what?
Yeah.
And you have all this fun all day long because you've got all these new segments always coming up that you can do however you want to do it.
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly true. I was thinking what my next deliberate creation is, and actually, what is probably the next one, I can't say for sure that it is my next one because I'm still exploring it. I'm still trying to decide whether I really want to pursue this.
Hmm.
But I had a conversation with Joel yesterday after the morning podcast, and it was kind of a sort of like a two-person mastermind, and it was also just kind of wide-ranging conversation and
Hmm.
really enjoyable. I always love the after calls that I have with him. But in this particular case, he gave me a really interesting idea that he's brought up before, but for some reason it didn't resonate in the past, and this time it resonated. I'm
Hmm.
giving consideration to doing some local seminars, actual live in-person seminars, uh, in some way related to the topic of the law of attraction.
Hmm.
And I can't really tell you a whole lot more about what I have in mind because I don't really know yet what I have in mind. It's just
Right.
I'm still exploring it. But
Hmm.
um, well, I can tell you one other thing. I'm thinking of making it about relationships. Helping single people get into the kind of ideal relationships they're looking for. But beyond that, I don't have anything more to tell you. I don't know yet. So
I definitely join that with you.
you would join that one? Okay.
I definitely would join that with you.
Well, I'll bring you on as an expert
You
presenter.
can have me there via satellite.
I'll tell a
Yeah,
screen.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm actually thinking about doing that. That is part of what I'm thinking about, taking advantage of the technology and
Hmm.
live screening people in. I'll have both of you guys come in and say hello, because I really think that the more people hear from, especially when it's a new concept to them, the
Hmm.
easier it is to start understanding and buying into it and using it and applying it in your
Hmm.
life.
Yeah.
Um,
Huh.
I'm still not sure how it's all going to look, but the more I look at it, I have to say it's very intriguing. So stay tuned for more details.
Well, I've got to talk with you because that's what I'm creating is live workshops, and I'm using a really good book called The Circle Way and another one called World Cafe to learn different methods of interacting with your audience
Hmm.
that are highly interactive. They really get everybody involved in the discussion in a
Hmm.
really integral way, and you create the collective field with the group so that it becomes a really alive So a third thing emerges from the whole group of, a consciousness of learning that is really cool. I mean, because it's you're setting it up that way. You're facilitating the audience's discussion in a really proactive way, where
Hmm.
it really encourages everybody's participation and everybody's creativity to come forward. And I
Mm.
love that. I love that thought of making the workshops revolve around that. Just like here, where I mean, in a way, if we had a better interactive way with our audience, we could be involving them even more in
Hmm.
this discussion. Of course, it
Yeah.
reaches a point where it gets
I'm
unwieldy
always,
if it's,
I mean,
yeah,
well, it does, but nevertheless, I like the fact that we do get the interaction we do get during the live
yeah,
streaming,
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
particularly commenting. And I'm like you. I'm always looking for ways to increase that. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, anything that I can do along that line, that we can do along that line, I'm definitely in favor of. I still don't know what I want to do with it, with this new concept. I mean,
hmm
this idea of doing something in the community. I
hmm
know that I don't want it to be just me giving a talk.
Hmm.
right,
I can do that, but that's really not what I have in mind. I have
yeah,
something more along the line of like a conference where you have multiple speakers coming in, both
Yeah.
live and telescreen.
hmm
Hmm.
But I don't have it. It's not more than that yet. That's as far as I've gotten.
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Well, it sounds good so far.
Yeah, I mean it's intriguing to me. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And
And I like how you're trying to reach the younger audience because where
oh yeah,
that's where we all started, that's where
absolutely.
I was introduced in my 20s. So,
Because of relationship issues, that's how you got introduced to law of attraction.
no, I was my boss was into she showed me the DVD of The Secret.
Oh, okay.
That's how I got introduced.
That's another thought that Joel gave me actually. I had it, but he also gave it to me. He has a longstanding policy. Whenever he gets a new client, he gives them a copy of The Secret. He buys,
Mm-hmm.
he buys used copies in bulk. And
Yeah.
he told me yesterday he has bought over the years over 2,000 copies of The Secret and
wow,
distributed it.
Wow.
wow,
I mean, can you imagine? Like, holy
Talk
cow!
about keeping them in business.
Yeah, really.
yeah,
So, and he just buys them, bulk loads of them.
huh.
But I was thinking, maybe not the book. I was thinking maybe get copies of the movie because there are lots of copies of the movie too. So maybe get the
Yeah.
copy of the movie, and
Yeah,
you invite people to the seminar, and part of their entry fee is they get a copy of the movie. So
Hmm.
something along that line. I don't know, but more to come. I still have to kind of feel this out and do some research and figure out who the speakers would be and what we're going to talk about and
Iron out some
who's the
details.
audience and yeah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
And try to do all that without actually planning it and just letting it happen. See,
Yeah,
that's the
just
hard
let
part for
it
me.
come to you.
Let it come, yeah. So,
Well, you might want to check out the website of the World Cafe as to see how they organize their seminars and conferences. I mean,
okay.
it's a method used all over the world now by, giant corporations down to, civic organizations. But it's a wonderful way to involve everybody in a really integral way.
Hmm. Yep. Very good.
Cool.
We have a few minutes left. I want to make sure I get our announcements in. Are you subscribing? How come you're not? Come on, subscribe. That's how you get all the good episodes coming to your smartphone every day. It's really easy. The links are in almost every place where this podcast is being posted. If you don't see the link, just go to the homepage of the website, loatoday.net, and just pick your particular advice, click it. It'll walk you through the process of being a subscriber. And then once you're a subscriber, share. Share with people that you know who you think might be interested that you're listening to the podcast. Tell them why you like it so much. Tell them why you think it's useful, how it's helped you in your own life. Tell that kind of
Hmm.
story because we want to keep spreading the word and helping more and more people get their daily doses of happy. And Tom, for somebody who's looking for life coaching, that's what you do for a living. How do they reach out to you?
Yeah. And go to my website, which is youarejoy.com. That's the three words, youarejoy.com. And then on there, there's a page they can fill out their information for a free half hour of coaching. So, it often turns into an hour, but if someone wants to check out my coaching, they can have some time with me and then see if they would like to do more. no expectation, and maybe in that half an hour learn some cool things, have some good experience. Yeah.
And Alyx, what's going on with you? I mean, I know you have your TV show podcast. Do you have any upcoming episodes to tell about, or anything else you want to tell about?
I'm doing an episode next week. There's a list of CW cancellations that are upcoming, so that should be interesting.
CW cancellations. You're going to have to, for those of us who are not rabid TV viewers, you're going to have to do a little translating.
CW is a channel. It used to be the Warner Brothers channel, but now it's I don't even know what CW stands for.
Country Western?
No, it's not Country Western.
You're not a Country Western comedian?
Not at all. But it's the channel that has like a Supernatural, Supergirl, all the superheroes are on that channel. So there's like 17 cancellations that are coming up. So we're going to talk about that.
And how do people subscribe to your podcast?
You can find me on what's it called?
I don't know.
Anchor.fm. You can go to anchor.fm and find me there. The show is called Spoiler Alert, or you can go to Spotify. I'm also on there, and I'm also on Google Play.
All right, good. Yeah, I've been making sure we're in a lot of places too. I'm on Spotify now. I'm trying to get into Pandora and a few other places so that we can be found everywhere on Earth. And that's
everywhere.
Everywhere in the universe.
In the universe, yes. Douglas Adams. So this has been great. Thank you very much, guys, and thanks for the questions, both from our audience and from our wonderful panel. And hope you guys have a great weekend coming up.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you. And we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.